first rediscovered stories. I mean, I'd been told stories all my life, but when I decided that this is the work that I wanted to do as part of my graduate career, I went to LCO because it was the closest Ojibwe reservation that I could travel to conveniently and still take care of my sons. So this is dedicated to not only Kimberlie today, but for time everlasting to the great James Pipe Mustache. It's called Mapping the Land. And James Pipe Mustache was this old man, old Ojibwe man, and I gave him a ride home. He could barely see, he had glaucoma. And I gave him a ride home one day, and I was talking to him about stories, and he knew that I'm very interested in protecting our waters. The Great Lakes region is a source of fresh water for the entire world, and we need to protect that body of water, and we're very serious about that. We're in a state of emergency right now, as you know. The mining companies from all over the world would like to get its hands on the minerals that are rich in this area. So we as Native people take this very seriously. Just the public service announcement. And the poets are gearing up for that too. So when I was younger, I would go on relays. We would run around the lakes, and we would run from Madison and back to bring awareness to people who depended on water, this body of water. And when I told James Pipe Mustache, he said something to the effect, "Oh yeah, I used to run. I used to run back and forth from the boarding schools. They'd bring me to the boarding school and I'd run home. I'd bring me back, I'd run home." And he would run from Tomah. I don't know if you know where Tomah, Wisconsin is, but they put him in Tomah, he'd run back home, he'd back and forth. Didn't matter what time of the year it was. He just didn't feel at home anywhere, but right there in Little Old Reserve. I think it's New Post. I think he lived most of his life. Anyway, I want to read this poem for you. This is mostly the voice of James Pipe Mustache. "Like the back of your hand," he told me, "with one eye a glaucomic gray marble, the brim of his hat shading his one good eye. You learn the land by feel, each place a name from memory, each stone a fingerprint, the winds from the house of cedar. At our feet, a 5-pound coffee can of spit and chew. The old man leans and with remarkable aim deposits the thin brown liquid without missing a step. I never thought much of the running, the miles between home and Tomah boarding school. He has since teased me about the relays, the long-distance marathons, the logic of treadmills. Who could explain that to this old man? The sport of running with no destination, no purpose, slogging like wild-eyed sundancers, foolish in the heat, snapping at gnats and no-see-ums, signifying our sovereignty step by step on 2-lane highways, raising the dust in unincorporated redneck towns, our fluorescent Nikes kicking up the blacktop, Ogeechee carrying us an eagle staff like an Olympian torch. Back then, we would pack the trail, banking it for those with no boots. School children, none older than 10, they were wise in their running. A month or two, and then they would be rounded up like calves into wagons, Indian agents, once again emptying the villages of our young. The old ones spoke no English and slipped into their own shadows, kept still in beds of bulrushes, familiar and safe. They held their breath as winter constellations set compass for them, as northern lights danced in a whir overhead, keeping track in an old-time way of knowing. Home in a week before sunrise, he'd grin. Every time, they'd never catch us. His cupped hands rest on an ironwood cane, peyote stitched at the crook by his knees. The old man looked straight ahead and then at me. But I never finished the 7th grade, my girl. The sudden twist of regret hung in the air between us. I hardly knew what to say, whether ignorance or stamina should be his disgrace, whether I could have found my own way back home, lost in the indecipherable space of the Chimokamon. And would I run again and again to return for a true education, and bleak seasons would come within a harvest of stories? Or like some, would I have learned the hard way, blinded by light, frozen in terror like a rabbit, faking my own death to stay alive?
Hello, I'm Kimberlie Acosta with IndianCountryTV.com, and I'm here with Denise Sweet, and she's been at a writing conference all week down here on, is it Lake Michigan that we're at?
Yes. This is an area that is historically known as a gathering place, and in fact, the town of Milwaukee, or the city of Milwaukee, derives from a Menominee and Ojibwe word, which connotates a gathering at the waters.
And that's pretty much what your conference is. That's the name of your conference, right? Can you tell us about the conference and what it all entailed?
I'd be happy to. Returning the Gift, Native Writers Circle of Americas is an organization for Indigenous writers, playwrights, lyricists, performers, spoken word performers to get together and celebrate the accomplishments and the notoriety of the storytellers and the writers amongst us here in Predominant Community. We've made a name for ourselves since the 60s and the 70s, and it was in 1992 that Native Writers Circle began in Norman, Oklahoma. 300 of us were there, and I was there on a scholarship, and it virtually made my career as a writer. So this is the 20th year, Kimberlie, of Returning the Gift, and we are happy here in the city of Milwaukee to host the festival as a part of Indian Summer.
And you just read a poem, which we're going to show right now, that was about water. And what was the name of the poem? And you want to give us a little intro before we go to the poem?
I'd be happy to. It's a poem that I wrote while I was serving residency on the Apostle Islands. I wrote a poem called Migration. And as you know, the waterways served as a transportation system for the Anishinaabe. And a lot of us traveled by canoe to bring the harvest during what we call now Indian Summer, corn, beans, and squash to other tribes who would trade with us. And we had a harvest to share, and we had dances and stories to take part in. And so it's a migration of people, not just animals and not just birds and not just those that travel in the water bodies, but it's a migration of commerce and people. And now it's a migration of cultures along the shores of Lake Michigan. We're proud of the Great Lakes region, and we're willing as poets to devote our attention to this body of water to protect it for the world. Migration. The forces of nature make migration dangerous, especially for the young, the old, the ill. Animals have no choice about when to start this journey. They simply go when it is time. That's from an article written by Dennis Flanagan entitled Beautiful Travelers. And now, migration. Out of nowhere, a Michigan trout as big as a spaniel breaks the black and white shawl of water in front of me. I glance at the source, and in that bitter moment, I could see winds threshing through the air or paddles boiling through waves. In that second, some 17 pounds of fish, sleek and silent as stone, scoops and smacks the surface with a thunderous conviction. Greg says, they come in from Lake Michigan. They might stay or group up. When the ice goes out, they come in. This is their range. They're territorial. Trout, drifting to rest somewhere, earthing and squalling like sand coyotes, their unruly occupancy within this clear expanse of precise activity. Resting only until the half-light of dawn triggers something close to fever, and they're moving again within a clear apron of water. I look across the bay, waiting for a resurfacing. A steady prayer between wave and rock follows what agile patterns I claim as my own. Every 5 years, I move towards a territory of which I belong. Every 5 years, everything changes, but that I am moving. A migration built into the blood, I scuttle towards a source that left a mark on my soul's geography, part clock, part compass, part feral force. I drift to rest somewhere beyond the rigmarole, the daily treading of water, holding my head above any turbulent wave. In my returning or in my remaining, it is a long, hard swim, either way.
And in Wisconsin, we're dealing with a lot of trying to keep the mining out and trying to protect our water. What does water mean to you as an Anishinaabe woman?
Well, I live in the city. I've lived most of my life in the city, and I've spent most of my professional career life in the city. And I have to be by bodies of water in order to be productive as a poet. I don't find a lot of inspiration in man-made structures, buildings, and that thing, although they're very beautiful. There are some very beautiful points of architecture in Milwaukee. Bodies of water call me. bodies of water sort of sort things out for me. It seems as though it's a washing away of all of the toil of the day. Work is love made visible. Water is the washing away of all the hard work that you put in your art, or just it's like taking a wash of all of the work, the labors of the day. So that's what water means to me. And as a poet, I know that water at a molecular level makes me think clearer. So it's very important for me to even just put my feet in the water when I pray, when I sing, or when I want to think clearly about a topic that I want to write about.
And tell me about Native writers and how you became a Native writer and the whole project with the different people that are here this week. Anyone influence you? Anyone make a difference in your life?
Absolutely. I owe everything to Joy Harjo and Scott Momaday, Simon Ortiz, people who spoke to me personally and encouraged me. Even though I have a small voice and I'm a small person, I can be a force to be reckoned with. Simon has told us that believe that what you say is important. And Scott Momaday says that man must imagine himself. To be truly of this world, you must have an imagined idea. The earth remembers who you are by what you imagine yourself to be. And Joy, of course, has taken it to a whole other level, and she's been performing with us all weekend. It is that groundswell of 1 or 2 or 3 writers, and now I know writers from all over the world, because 1 or 2 or 3 writers, Native writers, who stepped forward and said, let's do our battle with words now. Let's become word warriors and take it to the level in which we can speak in peace and in tranquility and join together and for the greater good of people.
And what would be your advice for young Native writers who would like to continue writing, to encourage them to continue in writing? What would be your advice to them?
Well, I try to make myself as available as possible. And if I find someone who I believe has the grit and the determination to be a writer, because it's a very lonely pursuit, to do that on a regular basis and to not give up, then let me help you. Because my career is sort of up and down, and it's in phases, really, and it's a popular taste. One day you're a woman writer, next day you're a tribal writer, next year you're the new poet. For a period of time I was the state poet laureate. So there is a popularity that runs in trends. New writers, we like to discover them, and we like to bring them into the fold because we want them to have a greater success. I think as tribal people, we like to see our children have a greater success than we had, and not to make it as difficult as we had it.
Is there a website for the conference that you're attending where people can go and learn more about it?
Yes, there is. There's a couple of websites. People should know that all of us can be located on Facebook. So you can locate me as the past Wisconsin State Poet Laureate, Denise Sweet, but also Returning the Gift, Native Writers Circle of the Americas is one website that you can find just by Googling it on the internet, and also Wordcraft Circle. If you are a young writer and you want to sort of break into educating yourself the way Indian people learn how to write, which is not always in the classroom, go to Wordcraft Circle. Either way, we will track you down and try to make things happen for you. Lee Francis Jr. is carrying on the legacy of his father. Lee Francis, who was from the Laguna Pueblo, helped me personally, made sure that I made it to the very first festival, and literally paid my way to come there. And so when Lee passed, we thought the organization would fold. But his son has taken up the charge, and now, Kimberlie, I'm happy to announce that we have writers that are writing comic books for our children. So there is no end to the rainbow.
Nice. And give us one, looking at the water, Lake Michigan here, give us one thing to leave us with something. What do we got to do to protect this water?
Well, just know that our Mother, the Earth, and our Father, who is the sky, can do very well without us. They have given us the gift of life and all of the things that we would ever possibly need to exist on this earth. And when it's time for our mother to clean herself, she will do so with the water that it's left on this planet. If it's time for the earth to turn into a dormant seed and all of the water is taken away by her children, then so be it. Then it's time for a changing of the waters and of a wiping away of the tears. I believe in that ceremony. So just understand that if we don't find a way to clean Mother Earth, she will take care of that herself, and Father Sky will help her. So I have faith, and even though the waters might not be perfectly clean for my great-great-grandchildren, the 7th generation, Ashki Bamadazig, will have good, clean water to feed their children. I have that faith in my culture.
Well, Chimigwich, and thank you for joining me. Kimberlie Acosta with IndianCountryTV.com. Thanks.
Thank you.
Beauty at its best is undisturbed in winter. The white wings of ice and snow wrap around this forest without so much as a whisper. This dry oak savanna fills and fills without warning, without witness, and then one day we're buried in our own mock amazement. Where did all this snow come from? As though drifts of snow and slates of ice would not have been here had we paid attention, had we not slept through the howl of storm or let go of the rope that tethers us to autumn. I wander through the wooded corridor of red banks surrounded by silver maple, poplar, birch, slender red cedar stemming skyward, left to plod and stammer through drifts of snow, no tracks for me to follow. No posted maps with arrows or stars to mark the spot on which I stand. The sky is all I recognize. The star stories and the legends of naked-eye astronomers begin to stir and whisper with names swaying within the wind. In my 3rd season, I have finally learned to be still. In my 3rd season, I have finally learned to wait. The people of the thunders gathered around the strangers at this inland shoreline, those ones who spoke with great eloquence and grand gesture in splendid robes ornate with feather stitches, folds of satin, ones who could throw lightning and split open the sky with a crash of thunder no one could remember ever hearing, ever, anywhere around the lakes. A red-tailed hawk follows my curious wandering. What is an Ojibwe doing here? Beyond this wooded stretch is a highway, and the distressing sound of 18-wheelers and SUVs sailing through this moment to an urgent other place, wholly unaware of the slow, searing stare of this hawk or the mincing steps of a white-tailed deer before she leaves the wooded grove, before she races frantically back and forth and then across the highway into an open field to safety. What moves, moves. A star story sweeps through the sky, pours over the heart of this wooded land, and the origin of thunder finally breaks open and causes the earth to be remembered once again.